It's not the answer that enlightens, but the question. Hmm. It's not the answer that enlightens, but it's the question that is being asked. Welcome to another Rare Leader Conversation. I am Twain Jalen, joined by the wonderful.
Danielle Jalen.
And over the past couple of weeks here, we've been talking about questions that can change your life. And all human progress was preceded by a question. And today we're going to be talking about two different questions. And the first question is going to be about how does the rest of the world view me? Uh, this is a very difficult question to answer, isn't it? And to answer it actually accurately. Say that 10 times fast. But why is it important?
Well, I think it kind of gives you an idea of where you make the most impact in those that are around you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Years ago, I was at a networking event, and I say this is the reason why I don't have a personal bubble because I come from a family of, 9 children. And I was talking to one of the restaurateurs there, and there was a picture taken of us that was later put in this magazine. And I opened up the magazine, and the picture is of me talking to him, but this happened. I'm leaning in. He's literally looking like this back in the photo. So it was just one of my learnings that, you know what? I've got to work on my personal bubble stuff. But, this question, like, it's a difficult question. I mean, most of us are actually clueless about how we appear to others. It's sort of like the good old saying, you know what? Once you take a photo of yourself, it's a lot different than the actual what you thought yourself was. So, why is it that we have our own vision of ourselves in our own mind, but a lot of times it's often far from the truth?
Well, I think it's easy to make up stories in your head about who you are and what you think that you are gifted at doing, and sometimes you may not be as gifted in those areas as you think that you are.
And I think it's also the flip side of that coin is that there's areas where you actually feel that you're not good at, yet in actuality you are good at it. I mean, if you can see yourself as the rest of the world sees you, you'll be able to identify a few simple tweaks and actually change your results dramatically. So, what are some things to do then to find out how the world sees you?
To go hide behind the door and listen when people are talking about you.
Oh, so that's your secret.
No, I think just having conversations with others and just saying, like, how do you see me making impact on where we're at, and just asking about it.
And asking in the book Intentional Living, John Maxwell talks about this. Asking without retribution, right? Like not getting defensive. Because feedback is a gift. And there's a book by the author Miguel Ruiz, I think, who wrote the Four Agreements. He talks about how someone else's feedback of you is simply that. Basically, it's just feedback, and it means nothing until you attach a meaning to it. I think it's good because there's truth in all things. They're not completely 100%, I believe, wrong. And when we ask for feedback, it's also, I mean, if you're a leader, whether it be in business, whether it be in your relationships, I know sometimes I want to ask you questions about actually how I'm doing, what's your view of me. And to be honest, I sometimes shy away from it because I think sometimes we know, yet we don't know. I mean, why do we like know that it's a question that we should probably ask, but we don't ask it then?
I think honestly, we just don't really aren't ready to hear the answer versus wanting to hear it either.
But by hearing the answer, what can that do for us, though?
It just depends on where you're at. He can upset you, or I mean, like I said, if you're ready to hear the answer, then it makes it a little different asking it.
And I think too is like if you're in the mindset of growth, you know, do you truly want to grow? And I think we can't take every kind of feedback to heart. We can listen to it, but we can't make that as solid gold. And if I think sometimes if we get feedback and we get ultra defensive right away, and then take a step back, there's actually some truth when I sit back and reflect on it. So I think that's a great question to ask is, how does the rest of the world view me? So you could actually send an email and send to, 5, 10 friends and say, hey, I'm looking to grow as an individual. It could be your spouse, it could be your kids. You know, how do you view me as a leader? How do you view me as a spouse? How do you view me as a friend? And it's one of the questions I actually ask in my interviews is, how would your best friends describe you? If I talk to your 5 of your best friends, how would they describe you? And people's reaction like, I really don't know. Oh, they probably say I'm this and probably say I'm that. Here's the next question with the 10 questions that we ask. And this is a very powerful one. What are my values and am I living them? I believe that most people only have a fuzzy idea of their values. There's times in which my values are fuzzy. I lose an alignment of them. I mean, I had an idea of them, and all of a sudden I get out of an idea of them. Like, why did I get off track? What makes this a powerful question for you, at
Well,
least?
I think this kind of just it somewhat relates to how does the world view me, because where how does the world view me, it may end up making you try to please everybody, um,
Mm,
because you want to be liked by everyone. At the same time, this draws to who you are as an individual, and am I living true to my values and not trying to please everybody?
yeah. There's a story of Lifetime, the TV channel, and they had this opportunity to get life in this Sex in the City. And they're all excited about it in this big board meeting, and then there was this voice in the back that said, "How does this align in the values of our channel, of our purpose?" And everyone's like, "Oh." Because I think when you have clarity around your values, it helps you make better decisions. Like it becomes your filter for your decision making. And I thought about this when we were putting this together. It's like if I call up 5 of the people that are closest to you, what would they say are your top 5 values? And if they're not able to say it, is that a bad thing? Or what questions would you ask yourself then if called up 5 people that are closest to you and said, okay, what are Daniil's values?
Well, if they can't answer it, I think that it goes to how you're living. Like, are you living according to what you truly believe, or are you conforming to those that are around you?
And it's like going with the crowd or going against the crowd, right? And there's people like Nate Diaz from UFC. Say what they want to say about the guy, but you know where the guy stands on things. And I think that's the reason why he's so popular. I think when you want to go ahead and stand out from the crowd, and I'm not talking in a way to just stand out, but you are so convicted on your values that they know, you know what, it's not going to bend. I remember years ago when one of Ezekiel's friends said something about like asking one parent to the other parent. And he said something like they're like Fort Knox or something. What I can't remember. You remember that? You remember that at all? He said that the kid said, "Oh, they're like Fort Knox. They are like you're not going to go ahead and play, mom versus dad." And I think that's important too. Is like, so, do you have your family values? Do you have your own values? Because I think without the values, it's hard to have direction. And it's hard to maintain that direction without the values. When you think about, you know, all the different people in the good book, they talk about. When he was up building that wall, he would not come down because his values and his mission was very clear. No matter what was going to happen, he was going to stay building the wall. And I think by really identifying what's important to you, like what hills are you going to die on? And let me ask you this question to divert from that. Can your values change?
Yeah, I think that they can change. I think as you grow as a person, your values will change. Because I think you'll start to learn what things are more important to you and they add to your values, not necessarily that they change, but I think they can be added to them.
hmm Or they can definitely evolve. Like for example, when we were young parents, I was really chasing to go ahead and create the wealth and do all these different things. And now as we got older and our son gets older, I am like working on finding different ways to connect. Like I literally sometimes think about intention. All right, let's go to the store, champ. Let's go for the drive because that time I really value. Right, being able to go ahead and invest and sow into our son. And then are you living them? You know, I was looking through my goal book from the beginning of the year. For some of you guys who've ever seen this, we have a book that gives you a reflection on the prior year and the new year. And I was reading through it today, this week and last week. I'm like, huh. Like, oh, I got that. That was important to me. Well, that was no longer important to me. But I got a different version of that. And I look at my vision board. It's right on here. Like, okay, like why did I choose that? Like, for one of the things is to have a 10-day vacation with the family, extended family, right? Like, why did I put that part of my vision? My Champions Club is it's a recognition level at work. 20-year anniversary trip. Gosh, can we go do that again? That was an amazing trip. Why did I put that on there? So I think when you look at your goals and things that you want to achieve, ask yourself, why do you want it? Because I think that opens up the doorway to understanding your values. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it helps you like solidify, am I on the right track, or do I need to look at these, or what was the intention and purpose behind that versus, am I hitting it and making those adjustments then that are needed.
Yeah. And it becomes like your compass. My word this year is my value this year is like build. Like I literally look at my board here, dream it, believe it, build it. And I think so many times when you ask yourself, am my values and what am I making important? Is it serving me or hurting me? There's a book, I forgot the name of it. I see a title, it's something about battle. I forgot the war battle. Talks about making different things that are gods. It's like you can make your working out a god. You can make, a relationship a god. I can't remember the name of the book. Can't remember the book. I can see the title. I can see the book. I can see the book, not the title. But anywho, so in terms of like looking at your goals and ask yourself, why do you want to achieve X, Y, Z? If you're having a challenge of asking yourself, like, what are my values? What's really, truly important to me? Because once you know your values, the decisions become easier and you can also build your self esteem from it. But I also believe that knowing your values and living them also creates a life that you find fulfilling. So, if you were to say like two of your top five values, what would you say they are?
I think family for me, um, putting family first over the things that other activities that are going on, and probably um, I don't know, um, our family, and I think probably our health and understanding like what for us what it looks like to be healthy and to be able to have that time then together as a family.
Right.
long term.
I heard this morning. We talk. It goes back to when you actually made me think about this, the long term stuff. Um, when your values are also tied to your vision of how do you want your life to look like. And I believe it's very important to write things down because when you write your vision to paper, it's like you give permission to your imagination to start working on it. And like there's things inside of us that we're like, man, like I gotta do this. I gotta move forward on it. And I think it's too is like I heard this the other week when listening to an Ed Milet and Eric Thomas podcast. It said like, when you're walking in your values and in your purpose is when you get joy in doing it. When I spend time in the Word, when I spend time in just listening to Scripture and stuff like that, I get joy in it. When I get a chance to share with people, and I value adding value to others. That's a value of mine. My family is a value that I hold strong. Knowing that I'm always going to be taken care of, my faith in that. It's like that's a value. So those are two questions we talked about today. Number one, how does the rest of the world view me? Because how the rest of the world views you, some people say, I don't care. And I get that. But we care and we don't care. There's a balance. Actually, more of a harmony. And number two, what are my values and am I living them? Take a piece of paper out. Write down your answers to these questions. Feel free to put it in the chat. Send us a message, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Twitter, or the Rare Leaders Facebook group. We want to hear your thoughts on what came up for you by answering these two questions. So as we finish up here, Danielle, what would you say as some final thoughts for you?
I think that even though we try to not care what the world thinks of us, I think it's important to use that as a guideline for, are we living our true values in the way that we are meant to be living? And if we're not living according to those values, I think a lot of how the world views us will show that to us.
Yeah. I think values are like lighthouses. They're like signals giving us direction, meaning, and purpose. And I think we all want to pursue a life of purpose and fulfillment. So, until next week, when we go over the next two questions here, I'm Tony Jalen, joined by the wonderful Danielle Jalen. Until next week, be a rare leader, rise up.